mouth is when I'm ocean waves.
Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have Stephanie Zay, former Oakton phenom who scored many goals in the days before Mia Hamm. Ended up going to UNC, was a star at UNC as well. Just a phenomenal soccer player who I've heard legend of for years. Meeting her for the first time. Stephanie, nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
Nice to meet you, Julian.
Yeah. So, well, look, the first thing that comes to mind with a person like yourself, a player like you, is you didn't have the opportunities that athletes have today. And the other day I was watching the women's national team in a World Cup exhibition game, and they're preparing for this summer. How do you think about that when you look at the opportunities that the athletes have today? Is there any regret at all that you didn't have those opportunities, or is it mostly or positive? Like, I'm glad that these great players get a chance to do things that I couldn't do.
Well, I'm just so thrilled how women's soccer has, my years, we were kind of the pioneers, and we kind of paved the way for all this greatness that's happening today. And I'm really excited about how far soccer's come and all these young athletes, and just how it's evolved over the years.
Yeah. Did you realize at the time that Northern Virginia was so advanced in female soccer? When you think about Jill Ellis, Mia Hamm, there's so many coaches like Sue Montaigne, Barb Wickstrand, so many great players and great coaches, women on the women's side, came from Northern Virginia. Did you have any idea back then that you were at this hotbed of soccer talent?
Well, I kind of had a feeling when I was recruited. We had this. It was Vodika, Rail Vodika. Sue Vodika's mom passed away, I believe, of cancer, and it was a huge tournament. And it was kind of the first year that Anson was putting together this. Who we didn't know was the beginning of a dynasty, and he came up, and there were 4 of us that were recruited from Northern Virginia: Susie Cobb, Diane Beatty, Kathy Kelly, and myself that first year. And then also in that tournament, he recruited Emily Pickering, and then he recruited a few gals from Texas who weren't at this tournament. So he must have gone to 2 hotbeds, Northern Virginia and Texas. Wow. And through there we had an incredible goalkeeper, Marianne, Amy Machen, and Wendy. So he recruited 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us, and there were 3 players, and then another player. She's a phenomenal coach. 2 of them. Janet Rayfield was a senior, so she was kind of our leader of these Bad News Bears freshmen coming in, and 8 of us. And then Lori Gregg, I think was at Virginia for a long time. She was Massachusetts, and so she came in, and so Anson counted on, and Susan Ellis, which was homegrown, and she's done incredible things in Chapel Hill. And so there are those 3 that they were kind of counting on to reel us in. They had a hard time, but we all came together as a team that first year, and I mean, we were unstoppable. It was incredible how we all gelled. We were the best in Northern Virginia. Like, Diane was the best at Springfield High. Kathy and I played together at Oakton and our clubs, and then Susie was out in McLean. So we didn't really care for each other at the time because we were big competitors, but we are best of friends today.
Yeah. Well, how did you get started in soccer in the first place?
Well, I have to do a shout out right there. My mom and dad, who passed away. This was their celebration of life in 2018, unexpectedly. But my mom 2018, my dad 2019. Then COVID hit, so we just a year ago finally had a big celebration of life in Key West where they live. Oh. But anyway, what I was going to say is they started. My parents coached me. I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, and growing up, I started playing when I was 5, and I would play with the boys, and because there wasn't really it was all house league, but then the different areas. So then I joined, my mother coached me through 8th grade, which we moved from Alexandria out to Oakton. And that's where I went to high school. But we played, she coached me in soccer. My dad coached me in softball and basketball, so they were very influential. They were both athletes themselves, and they were very, they made me who I am today.
Well, it's so interesting that your mother coached you, because when you think about it, there wasn't, much soccer that could have been played when she was a kid. So
Right.
how did your mother learn soccer? Who taught her how to play soccer?
She just kind of pulled all these rugged little athletes from our community together, and then we had a few. We went. She sent me off to a couple little camps like Randolph-Macon in Virginia at that time, and that's how we were coached then, by our parents, or we didn't have professional coaches.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of, she learned the drills and things like that. And there were kind of like two teams. We'd always, the women livers, and we were the checkmates. We would always play for the championship. But anyway, and actually the women livers, this was back in the 70s, they were coached by a father. So everyone that's how it kind of was, ex-athletes at the time, and they would come together and coach us.
Who were your first heroes in soccer? The people that because we couldn't watch soccer on TV like we could watch it today. I think the diplomats were playing back then. So some of us went to watch Pele play.
He was definitely. I didn't have any women that influenced me in soccer, but in tennis I did. Martina Navratilova and Chris Evert. I was actually a ball girl over at the old Capitol, or whatever. I was a ball girl there for the Virginia Slims. Not very politically correct now, but I was a ball girl, and I ball girled for them, for Martina and Chris Evert in the finals at what's that stadium called? The indoor where the Bullets used to play.
Oh, at the Cap Center.
The Cap Center, yeah, but it's different now. It's somewhere else.
Yeah, somewhere else. Yeah.
So I played tennis and had a lot of coaching in that. My mother, I was just kind of running from sport to sport to sport, because I just loved. That's what I did. I loved all kinds of sports, from football to anything I could get my hands on, to basketball. And I actually, wasn't until my senior year that in the spring, that I figured out where I was going to go to college. My senior year, after this tournament, my dad took me to Virginia Tech, and I was offered a place. I was I'm 5'2", but I was very quick, and I was offered a spot on their basketball team. Of course, not as a guard. And so that was a choice. UVA. They didn't have, not that I was looking for any money, because scholarships were kind of unheard of at the time. But Anson Dorrance, he was my first real incredible coach. I mean, he taught me everything I know today. If I could back up for just 1 second, when I got into high school, I joined the Annandale Boys Club. And again, it was a parent that coached. But we were, we did great, and we won most of all of our tournaments. And that's how I kind of came to meet a lot of the others, like Diane, Susie, Emily, through these tournaments that we would go to up in New York and New Jersey, mainly on the East Coast, a little bit up in Canada, but not on the West. But what was I getting to? I was talking about.
I'd be curious as to, well, how important was basketball to you? I didn't realize you were a basketball player, and I probably saw you play, because my sister Julie was 82 Robinson, and she was a good basketball player as well as soccer, and she played with Kathy Kelly at Fairfax Strikers. So what about your basketball? How important was that to you?
I mean, I love basketball, but I love soccer more. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I loved anything. It was kind of a seasonal thing that I would play, and I was quick. Those fast breaks, I'd be down at the other end, and I might get 2 shots up. I miss the first layup and make the second one. That's kind of how it rolled. But my dad was he was a great coach. he played in college at Ferrum at a junior college football and basketball. So he was very influential in coaching me in my younger days. And the same with tennis. But in tennis, you kind of had to make a decision. You're going to go that route. So at about 12, I decided just to not focus, but I still played tennis, but I couldn't really be as competitive unless I wanted to select tennis as my sport. They were a little more advanced, tennis was at the time, than soccer and basketball, as it is today.
What made you so great in soccer? You mentioned you're 5'2", and the good thing about soccer is, Lionel Messi's 5'4", 5'5". It's a sport where, there's a position for everybody. But what made you so good? You're quick. You just had a knack for goal.
That's what they said. I mean, that's what I did. I scored goals. I was when at this tournament where Anson was kind of forming his team for the year. This was the first year we were AIAW when I finally went to college, but I had no clue who was going to even be there. I didn't know 4 girls from Northern Virginia and another big competitor of mine, Emily Pickering, were even going to be there. We couldn't really stand each other at the time, but like I said, we're besties today. But we didn't know each other. That was what it was. But when Anson this is what I heard after about a year or so, Anson, and there was a book that was put out. He went and he was going to all the games, and people were saying, you don't want to recruit that Stephanie Zay because she's selfish with the ball and all she wants to do is score goals. And he kept hearing kind of that same thing over and over again as he'd walk around teams we'd play. Oh, she's not a team player and this and that. And I had no clue. But he said by the end of the tournament, he had 2 scholarships, full scholarships to give. He offered me a full scholarship. So, and then he broke the other scholarship up amongst the other players, because at that time, UNC, I mean, I think we were the only school giving scholarships at that time for soccer. It was kind of the first year. And I didn't know that either till after like a couple seasons with the team. But that was kind of exciting to hear, but kind of on the other side, you hear all these parents like talking and other coaches, trying to tell him not to recruit me, that, she won't do well because she's selfish and da da da. But anyway, it's kind of the start of the team.
Yeah.
All of us coming together.
Yeah. Well, how important was high school soccer to you? Was because nowadays there are very good club players that don't even play high school. Was it important for you to play for Oakton High School as well as your Annandale Boys Club?
It was like I said, I was playing Annandale Boys Club, but it allowed, I would go right from practice, and then I think it was tennis at the time. I was on the tennis team. I wasn't playing, but I still played number 4 or 5 singles. I wasn't one of the top 3 because that's what they did. They were just superstars, and play doubles and singles. And then I ran track. They let me run the relays for track, and played basketball. And then soccer was it was coached. She didn't know, she pulled us all together. She didn't know the game well. She was a teacher. And so we just it was the talent that kind of drove us at that time. But I just kind of went from sport to sport. And I think it's very important to play for your high school. And in fact, when my daughter, she played at Chico State. I was living in California in the Bay Area in my 20s. I moved out there and had my family out there. And my daughter played at Chico State. And that's when the coaches in the Bay Area, they were saying, oh, the coaches, the professional coaches wanted to keep all the players together. And I coached at Mountain View High School where my daughter played, but we just all decided they're going to play for their high school team. You can't get that back, and you get so much from it. So they ended up switching it around. So we played winter soccer, and which wasn't good for playing soccer year round anyway. A lot of injuries happened and all of that. But your question was how important is playing?
Yeah.
a high school sport or doing anything in your high school, whether it be, your debate or, um, whatever club you're in is so important because, you meet different people and all walks of life and you're playing within your peers in different classes. So it's so important.
Sanson Dorrance. And did I pronounce it Dorrance, right? That's how you pronounce it. But he's one of the most successful coaches of any kind in America. I mean, he's won, I don't know how many NCAA championships, but probably like almost like 10, I think he's won so many. But and I believe he's still coaching UNC today. Did you have any idea back then that this guy was going to be this coaching legend?
No, not a clue until not a clue. But he, at that time, the first year was AIAW, and he was coaching the men and the women for the first 2 years.
Wow.
He coached both teams. So he'd have us going he'd have us traveling together and or he'd schedule, it was a big scheduling deal. And we went it was just, we had incredible athletes on all sports. When we won the national championship, Michael Jordan, James Worthy, and Sam Perkins, they won the championship. We had them all we were all doing our things on our field. The soccer team, the basketball team was running track, running their sprints. It was a real community of all the athletes at the time. We all ate together, hung out together. It wasn't so separate and as it is today,
Yeah.
It's really special.
Did you know my friend Tommy Nicholson? Tommy played at UNC. He was younger than you. He was class of '88, but he went to Lake Braddock and he was a star for UNC, the men's team.
I know the name. I know the name, but but when I injured myself in the national championship my sophomore year, I was working to get back into it, but the surgeries then, I tore all 3 ligaments and shattered my meniscus, yada yada. But that's when they would have like 3 big scars up and down my legs. But that's when they would cast you for like 8-10 weeks. So when I came out of the cast, I had this, like, it looked like a little hairy monkey leg that was bent in one position. It kept getting smaller and smaller. But how far they've come. So that was kind of the end. That was the end of my career, but my soccer career. But I ended up going on to do like student television and recording. So I would record some of the Carolina games and stay involved in that way. Yeah.
What was Chapel Hill like back then?
Oh, it was great. It was a great community. We most of the athletes stayed on the South Campus. It was just, everyone knew everybody, well, not everybody, but, you had sororities, you had fraternities, everyone had their, it was, I think it was important in such a big school. I didn't realize it to have, like for me and for my teammates to have each other, because coming in, it was a huge school, but it didn't really feel big because we were part of the whole athletics, where all of us would get together, the football players, basketball players, soccer, baseball, of us would, lacrosse they were great back then also. But I did want to say hey to Danny Burmeister. He played at UNC, and he came a year later. My sophomore year, he came and he was a kicker. Anyway, he was one who nominated me at Oakton High School. We played at Oakton together. He was also a super duper athlete himself. And one more shout out to Miss Kim Crabb, who she was a phenomenal player. She put us in touch with each other. And I think she's on one of your earlier podcasts.
Yeah.
But she has an incredible program here in the Wilmington area called Outreach for Cape Fear. And she offers, and I'm helping her as much as I can right now, volunteering. And she provides soccer to underprivileged and kids that normally, I believe this day and age, would never be exposed to soccer. And she offers every Saturday, 250 to 300 kids from 5 to 13. And then she has her older kids that have been with her. They come out. She has different time slots. So from like 8 to 4, they come out and they get to play soccer. And the Hammerheads, she has some coaches from the local, the professional team here, and high school kids that come out and help. But it's just wonderful what she's doing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to her, and her work is incredible. Also at UVA, you might have known Carl Carr from TC Williams and Tom Osborne from Robinson. They were all they were Danny's buddies. They all played together around the same time. Now you mentioned AIAW. Now people might forget there was a time when there was a separate organization that oversaw women's collegiate sports, and there were a lot of changes going on in the early '80s. Was life much different in college sports under AIAW than it is under NCAA?
At the time, we didn't know any different. We didn't know any different at all. And like when I was a senior, I'm going off to school, I found out that I was McDonald's. I think they still have, like, they're all American, but I was on the first team high school. I don't know how they voted on it, but I was the first team. It was kind of like all word of mouth, I guess, but the first team high school All-American. And then when I went to Carolina, AIAW is all we knew. I didn't really know any difference, and I thought it was incredible. I had never been in an environment of incredible coaching. We had great coaches, and the facility was phenomenal. I mean, you see it today, it's off the charts, but it was phenomenal. And it just how it was organized, and having such an incredible mentor coach come into my life and teach all these talented young women how to play at a different level. And so we were that first year, we had most valuable player, most valuable defensive player, offensive player of the AIAW, and I was voted on. I mean, those awards were given to me. We had first team, and I was given that award, for the AIAW. But then the second year, it was a little bit bigger, because they did break it into, I was National Player of the Year, different awards. I still hold a record today. Mia Hamm, she broke them all except this one, most goals scored. But anyway, that was my second year. And we didn't play as many games at that time, but I think it was 36 at the time. But records are meant to be broken. So I would love for a Tar Heel to come along and break that record.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing that you made the adjustment to college soccer so easily. I mean, you go from high school, and then you're National Player of the Year your first year of college.
Yeah, and yes, National Player of the Year, and most valuable, offensive player.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just amazing. So was the soccer team, now women's college soccer is gotten more publicity. It's more important to each college. Did people around campus knew about the Tar Heel soccer team? Were you guys?
Oh yes, we had a huge. We had the band would come and play. We had the local kids from Chapel Hill, and the little they would come out and be ball girls, ask for our autographs. It was it was really fun. We played our first championship in Keenan, and at that time, I think we had 6,000 people there. But the way they filmed it, the way it looked is the stadium was full, but it was Keenan Stadium. It was like 8 full, but they had it, everyone sat in kind of one area, and that was exciting. We had, but at that time, the top teams were UConn, Missouri, St. Louis, UMass, and ourselves. And then Central Florida came into play. But we just, and that was the first time we had ever played them in that championship, I think. We went up to Massachusetts and played. That was before, what's her name, who went to UMass. you mentioned her name.
Um,
She played with my sister on the FPYC, the Fairfax Police Youth.
yeah.
Anyway, anyway, she wasn't on the team at that time, but
Yeah.
she was like 4 years younger. But yeah, soccer, I think after we won the first 4 national championships, just imploded. And then once our class graduated, that's when George Mason, they had that single year that they won the championship. And then we came back. I think we've won 22. We have the most championships.
22. That's just so
Maybe
amazing.
more. Maybe I mean, but it's gotten so competitive,
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, there's so many good women's players now. It would be hard to dominate the same level with the amount of
It's
talent that's
hard.
out there. It would be very tough. So what was the adjustment like? You're this phenomenal athlete. You're a very humble person. Like you talk about these things like they're nothing, and it's great to hear that because I talk to great athletes all the time, and they kind of live in their achievements, and you just kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot I was national player of the year. But anyway, it must have been an adjustment for you when you got hurt.
It
Probably
was.
an injury today that they probably would be back on the field in 3 months the way they operate today. Anyway, it must have been a big adjustment for you not to be such a great athlete anymore and just to be a student.
Yeah, it was. And I actually, I got in my sophomore year, I had achieved so much accolades, and not to be, and then I really worked hard, and Anson and the trainers, they really worked hard to get me back out there, but my knee just wasn't like it was. I wasn't as fast. And so I figured I had reached what I was going to reach, and I could not get back to that level as hard as I tried. So I kind of stepped away from the team a little bit because it was kind of everything. It was everything for 2 years, and it was hard. And then the senior year, I came back in. Um, you know, it was just hard for me, very hard. And those recovering from that injury and making kind of a new way. And that's when I got involved in student television. A lot of athletes, it was called Rumpty Vump, radio, TV, motion pictures. And that was that. So I spent a lot of time over there, and I started to do student television productions and around the campus, met some new friends. And it was, just kind of, that's what happens, and that's what Carolina also afforded you. If something, one door shuts, another door opens.
Yeah. So how did you end up in California? Where did you go after graduation?
Well, I was recruited as the athletic director at a girls' private school called Castellea in near Stanford in Palo Alto, California. So I moved out to California and coached out there. I started to do soccer camps, met people on the West Coast, and it's when things were really starting to get hot, like Stanford and Berkeley, and the women's soccer was. And so I coached several years. I'd go away and I worked a few camps up in Alaska, and got my coaching license. And then I figured, and I went back for my master's at San Francisco State in athletic administration. But I ended up going, so that's what I did. I raised my family out there, and I ended up instead, I've always done the best working for myself. So in the summer, personal training was just kind of starting at that time.
Yeah.
So I started doing personal training, and I was like a big fish in a little pond in the Los Altos, Silicon Valley area. And so that's kind of what I did for years and years, and had my beautiful 2 children. One, Brian, he's graduating from Sonoma State.
Oh, congratulations.
I'm going to go back out there. I haven't been out in a couple years, but going back out to celebrate his achievement and see my daughter. They're in their 20s doing they're doing wonderful things. So anyway, so that's kind of what I did. Moved to California, had my children, was married, and coached my kids all through all their sports. Their father was we were great partners, and he coached my son was a hockey player, you know, my daughter's soccer, and I coached her, and we were involved at every aspect like my parents were. I think it's really important and stayed involved. Yeah.
What kind of sports parent were you? I mean, success came really easy to you, but you had very involved parents. Were you heavily involved in your kids' sports?
Very much so. Yeah. And we had my Robert, my ex-husband, we were very hands-on. And what we at that time, the clubs were starting to come along, and we coached at the when my kids were little, Mountain View High School. We were tag teaming Brian's hockey games and Casey's soccer games. I coached her all the way up until high school. And then she went on, actually she went on, and she was she had her junior year, she had a ACL tear. And she came back her senior year. That's the difference between now, you know, then. She worked really hard, and she was voted, and this is in the huge area, the Santa Clara De Anza League. That's the largest of all of Northern California. She was the most valuable player and most valuable defensive player of in high school.
Mhm.
That was incredible for her coming back her senior year and doing that. She went on to play a couple years like me at Chico State, and then decided to do other things, you know, just to get involved in other aspects. She stayed playing soccer, but she, again, there was a lot of wear and tear on your body.
Yeah.
You know, it is. And that's what we always tried to, everyone was pushing the year round playing soccer. And we always tried to take some time off. And it got really hard when my daughter got into high school, because they added that other season. All these professional coaches wanted they wanted their players to stay together year round. A lot of injuries happen. And so they pushed them playing at winter soccer league. And then they go right into spring, summer, fall. Yeah.
What do you think of the sports parents have today? Now, again, you're able to, your kids are great athletes like yourself, maybe not quite on your level, but what do parents get right, and what do they get wrong these days?
I think it's coming. Hopefully, it's starting to come back. That's what I was always working hard and telling. You know, they'd say, "Oh, can you coach my kid?" You know, she's like 8. Oh, she needs to really start training for soccer if she's going to move on. Or can you train them? Like my Robert. I will say Robert, my ex-husband. We had a training studio together, and we get all these parents coming in wanting their kids to start like training. Real, you know. It was we were kind of in a bubble. It had the means, and it was great for us too. We were in the service, but we'd have to kind of take a step back, because we didn't want the kids to overtrain, you know. And so I always push multiple sports, you know, for them to play or take a break. It's okay. They don't have to go to this tournament. And that's been the biggest thing, is they get wrapped up that they have to start and make a decision when they're in 4th, 5th grade, what they're going to do with their life, you know?
Yeah.
And like Michael Jordan, the story about him is, you know, he got cut from his high school basketball team, you know? It's kind of like, and then of course, he goes on and does incredible things. But the kids are still evolving, and especially young women, their joints and everything's, and when you just repetitive motion over and over through high school, I mean every day of the year, and in the same sport, your bodies break down.
Yeah.
You
So
know.
you feel like you're a talented personal one-on-one coach, and that's big in basketball. It's any sport, soccer. It's one-on-one training is the way of the future. It's actually the way it is now. But you're always kind of conflicted, because as good as you are at training kids, and as good an athlete as you were yourself, part of you felt like, is it really good for them to be really just going all out training for this one sport at all times? So there was kind of a conflict there.
Yeah, it was. And I've been out of the coaching for so long. You know, you want to make it fun, and I always loved it. You don't want to have a kid, a young woman, I mean, a teenager who's 13 years old, spending her Saturdays doing ladder work with me and running drills. You know what I mean? You want them to be out and they're one day off, or come from soccer practice and then spend another hour with the trainer. It's too much, way too much, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what was happening is, um, I think in my, I mean, I did play a whole lot of sports, but I have bad knees in my family. So I have to say genetically. So maybe that was, but maybe that was it, but I mean, who's to say, but I can say without a doubt that, the number of injuries, people getting recruited in soccer, and they come to Carolina or one of these other Division I schools, high percentage have already blown their knee out, you know, and they should just be getting started in their career, you know, or in high school, and they tear their ACL, and I think they're trying to work on things, but it's kind of, it's hard to do. I mean, I really think where we are now, because there's so many people that depend on that, their training as a profession, you know, and so they need to make a living. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's kind of how it has gotten. They have bills to pay, and that's what they're doing for a living. But be more mindful, you know, give the kids a break.
Yeah, it's very hard, and not just in soccer. Again, it's in all sports and almost all activities now. We push our kids so hard. What about as a coach? What kind of coach you were as a team coach? Did you enjoy coaching soccer as well? And do you enjoy the tactics and the in the management of a team?
Yeah, I love it. And when I was at Castellet, I coached the women's. These were players that came from all over different countries. It was a private school, and it was boarding. It was great for me to meet. And I still have friends today, and parents that I have met. But it was very elite. It was very elite, and it's still very elite today. But I coached the soccer, tennis, and badminton teams. I never played badminton, but at Stanford it was huge, and I spent a summer over there working with the U.S. national badminton team, because we had a lot of players from Hong Kong and Taiwan. What a great sport! But and I learned that was a new sport to me. But yeah, so I took this little private school, Castellea, and we won the GPSL both years that I coached them, and it was kind of a nice thing. Because it was such a small pool that I was pulling through. Put some players that were just good athletes, bring them out there, but it was great. You know, we play against big schools like St. Ignatius and Menlo College, teams that had high schools. We were like this little girls GPSL. So I stayed there for a few years, and then went on and trained, and yeah.
What part of coaching do you feel like you excelled at the most? The tactics of it, the inspiring young players? What do you think was your gift? What was the things that you were best at?
If I have to look back, I think it was just my just bringing the best, trying to bring the best out of them wherever they were, and having whatever their skill or their talent or their whatever they, just trying to make the most of that their what do you call it, their not
Their
their
potential.
skill, yeah, their potential, yes,
Their potential.
reaching their best potential, training hard, but having fun. We would always do different things. We'd never, you know, it wasn't the same grind every time, exposing them. And when I was coaching high school at Mountain View for a couple years, that was really hard. I was taking them in, and they were like, "Why aren't we playing soccer?" I said, "Well, you've been playing soccer, so let's work on." And we would do some like ladder work. We do a lot of different work with the Bosu, and do like some basketball, tennis, doing some things just to put some smiles on their face, because I knew what they could do. And they were going, a lot of them were going to play soccer right after they got done with me. So it was kind of like having a balance.
Yeah.
But it was about, I mean, I loved coaching and it was very rewarding, but that was the hardest thing that we were talking about before is just how the pressure on these young kids to play and to, year round.
Yeah. What kind of player do you think you would have been in today's game? I mean, you play at a time in the girls and boys side, there wasn't the technical type of coaching that the players have today. Your greater athleticism and your desire, you're impossible to stop. So what do you think you would have, what kind of player would you have been in today's game?
Well, just from the AIAW year to the next year, they would, Anson, and like I said, hands down, and an incredible coach. I mean, he had to make a lot of adjustments from our first to second year. And so that second year, I had like 2 people that was being double marked. So he did a lot of different soccer choreography, like overlapping runs. And so we were kind of the first to, and he runs still to this day. Maybe a lot has changed, of course, but a lot of those competitive kind of to bring the most competitive out of each player. And I think that each year I would learn another aspect of the game that I didn't know before. I mean, we had, and what I noticed when we played and a few years after, and to the players of today, all those players today, they kind of look like they all look the same. They can all do the same drills. Some are faster than others, and you got great scorers and great technical defenders and midfielders, but they all look the same, out there doing the drills, the overlaps. And so it's harder, I think that, because that's just the way the coaching has kind of become. So what kind of player would I be today? I think kind of the same as, you have players that I just think my competitive drive, I would be one of the top players today. As I
don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all. It's just interesting because you were such a pioneer, and the game has matured, and not just the female game, the male game also. It's matured so much over the last 4 years. But I talked to, I interviewed quite a lot of coaches, and some of these coaches, but one of the coaches told me, which guy, this was one of the guys in the Final Four. It might have been the UVA coach, who I'm sure but he told me the game has not changed as much as you think it's changed. He says it's still great athletes. You're still making the same. It's still technical. You have to be able to control the ball. You still have to be able to dribble the ball. He thinks things hasn't changed as much as we think they have. And it's still a game where you're trying to put the ball in the back of the net, and it's 11-on-11. So
right. I mean, and I think having, as Anson said, I mean, when I haven't been back in a little bit, but when I go, and he still, he had a video at my induction into the Oakton High School Hall of Fame, and he still refers to me as the greatest take on artist he's ever coached.
That's
and
awesome.
it's that kind of thing, as he said, it can't be taught. And that's what I learned from him. When you get a player, you don't want to restrict that player. You want to give them the tools and to
maximize their talents.
You don't want to, if there's like a little this or that, big head, whatever, or they, you don't want to press them down. Or like my second year when I was being double marked, he found a way to create an opening for me. So let's say we play 3 up top, I would make overlaps. We'd practice them over and over, and a serve ball, and then off to goal I go, because it couldn't be a pass through anymore because there were 2 players there. But he was very, he was ahead of his time, still is, and in his coaching.
Yeah. When you look back, what advice would you give to a young Stephanie Zay today? when you look back, you've been through a lot with your knees, and you weren't able to quite maximize, even though you had an unbelievable career. But what advice would you give to young Stephanie Zay if you had to do things over again?
I say, if you're just go, and you're passionate about soccer, you always want to love soccer. And if you're not loving it, then but as far as I always loved. I was very passionate about it. I knew what my role was on the team. I loved it, and just that love, and that you just don't want to, the fire in the belly. You want to have that, and you don't want to. And I think you don't want anyone to try to put that out. And you want to be with coaches that are going to raise you, and continue to raise you up, and make you a better player, as far as technically and all that. But a big part of that is and I would see a lot of these young players that were really so talented, looking at them, but they didn't have that fire in the belly anymore. Or they get to, I see it when they would get to college, they were just kind of, it's like little machines running around. But that was a while ago. But anyway, we all loved the game, and we all knew our role. So I just I guess that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Is just love the game.
Well, I know you've moved east to Wilmington, North Carolina, which I understand is a beautiful, beautiful town. I'm not sure if I've ever been, even though I might have driven through. We took the back way to Myrtle Beach one year. But are there other things that you like to achieve? And you seem like you have lots of energy, and you're very competitive. So I think when you put your mind to anything, you're going to be successful at it. Are there other things you like to achieve in your career or in life?
Well, now that I finally had a total knee replacement 8 weeks ago, feeling fantastic, and that's been kind of I've needed it since I was 40, and I'm turning 60 this year in July, and big 59, counting down the days, turning 60. But anyway, I kept putting it off, and I'm glad I did. I had an incredible surgeon, and like I said, the techniques today, it's amazing, and I'm 8 weeks out, feel great. And so now I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. I'm enjoying this nonprofit of Kim's and working with her. I also, I've always been into service, and I've been working at the food pantry in Wilmington, feeding hundreds of people coming through. They get to shop, and I'm getting so much back from that. So I'm trying to figure out where I want to go. And now that my health is better, probably in the next chapter of my life. So I go from soccer to training to, I had a doggy daycare for 20 years now. I think I'm going to go back into where I can give back. And I'm not quite sure what that is, but I think I'm in the right place.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie, look, so I've been interviewing Nova Legends, and I am so glad that Kim connected us, because you have an incredible story. And so I think it would be great for the young players of today to know more about you, because you were a phenom. We hear a lot about Mia Hamm, and deservedly so, and Jill Ellis and the other great achievers from our area. But your name was right up there near the top. I mean, you were unbelievable. And so I'm really glad you took the time to talk to me. Hopefully we can keep in touch. And if you're ever in the DC area, I would love to connect in person.
Well, that's great. I'm hoping, well, not hoping. I think in February, they're going to finally going to be inducted into the Virginia Hall of Fame for women's soccer. But again, it all comes somebody, and I think Kim, you have to have a nomination. But anyway, I think I got the nomination. So maybe in February, I'll shout out to you. But I really appreciate your time, Julian.
No, it's good. It was great. And I can't wait to send this to my sister, because I'm sure she knows exactly who you are, because you guys traveled in the same circle. She was a year younger than you. So she was 82, Robinson. But some of the names that you said today, I haven't heard those names since Julie used to talk about those girls back then. So it was a real treat for me to meet you.
As well as me.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Stephanie. Well, look, have a wonderful day, and let's keep in touch.